The stubborn
denial. Would you counter this?
It's interesting. So Ely only has 1 mana left over, and I believe he already played his land for the turn.
Mm-hmm. He did.
So if you don't counter this, then you can put yourself in a position where the Manamorphose and or Pyretic Ritual that he's following up this play with, that you can just Snapcaster that and win the game on the spot if you have some way to clear the blocker of Electromancer. And I believe he does have that Death Shadow here. So that's, I love this play. Yeah, that's it.
And so, with no blocker, the Death Shadow was lethal. Going to game 2, Ely with a Steam Vents. Ethan with a Scalding Tide.
Storm really punishes other combo players. It punishes more linear aggressive decks that don't have cards like Thoughtseize and Inquisition. But these types of matchups are really what you don't want to see when you're playing Storm. People who have the right number of removal spells that deal with things like Electromancer. People who have, targeted discard to take specific combo pieces. And a lot of the time, decks like Grist's Death Shadow even have a decent amount of post-board hate in the board for a matchup.
So Ethan actually went for an island, which is actually quite unusual. Like, is he worried about like a Blood Moon from the Storm deck?
Absolutely. I think it's entirely possible that you could see Blood Moons out of the Storm deck. Something that happens sometimes.
So Thoughtseize from Ethan, seeing 2 Grape Shots, a Manamorphose, and a Desperate Ritual. Kind of a anemic hand, not particularly great on Ely's side, especially after Thoughtseize is going to take at least one of the spells, probably not one of the 2 Grape Shots.
I imagine he's taking Manamorphose here.
And he does.
Cycles it.
Ely drawing another land, so his hand not getting that much better. Ethan having no pressure right now, but the Shadow has access to quite a few potent threats and really wants to get on the board as soon as possible. Playing the Snapcaster, flashing back that Serum Visions.
It finds himself a Serum Visions. Is it Staticaster there on the top of his library? And you might ask yourself, why is that there? And the reason is from what we saw in the previous match, wherein Empty the Warrens had become a big player.
Yeah, it seems that they nearly always will bring in Empty because you want to back up if you can't go for full combo.
Absolutely.
It's a Gifts Ungiven by Ely.
Yeah, and I think this is far and away the most powerful Gifts Ungivening deck in Modern right now. There's so many different piles you can put together. It becomes very difficult to lose a game if you're ever able to untap after casting a card like that, especially when your opponent's tapped out.
One of the more powerful things is Passion Flames. Basically,
yep,
no matter where you put it, they're going to have access to that card. So he goes for Pieces of the Puzzle, a Manamorphose, Desperate Ritual, and a Passion Flames. What would you give them?
I think you end up giving him the Manamorphose, you give him the Past and Flames and the, give him the Past and Flames and the Ritual.
The Ritual, yeah, the Desperate Ritual. Yeah. We actually gave him the Manamorphose, probably making his hand slightly less explosive. That's probably the reason.
And that makes sense, because with that Ritual, he knows that Ely's going to have access to however much mana he really wants to.
Yep.
Especially
with the Passive Flames.
Yeah.
So he casts a Thought Scourer, actually putting a Stubborn Denial into the graveyard, which is not a bad place for it, for Shadow, because they play some number of Snapcasters. I think in Ethan's case, he's playing the full set of Snapcasters. Playing a Death Shadow at a 2/2, so not that big. And Ely does have Grape Shots in his hand, so he can actually go for a small Grape Shot and actually clear the board if he wants to. That would take some amount of resources. I don't know, at this point, do you think that's the right way to go?
I think he may be looking for a way to simply end the game this turn, and I think he may have it.
Okay, so
depending
Manamorphose,
on what the top of his deck looks like.
He does not have one of the cost reducers in play, so
He could do it without, though, at this point, because he does have double grape shot, which, if the first one's for 5 and the next one will be for 6.
Desperate Ritual has 3 red and pull. Pyretic Ritual, 4 red and pull.
So if he has one more spell that he can cast before...
Right, so he casts Passive Flames.
Yeah. And
playing
now
some of the rituals out of the graveyard.
He almost certainly wins. He's just going to cast a whole bunch of rituals, then he has a pair of grape shots in hand.
Yep.
And send those off.
Yep. Storm counters at 7, so at 8. And so now if you just cast both... Yeah, if you cast both the grape shots, it's just going to win.
Yeah.
So he actually doesn't need both. He actually can do it with one. Okay, so we're going to game 3 here. Ely just able to go off, like even, getting kind of thought seized a little bit there, and Ethan having a pretty good hand.
Yeah, I think, if you're able to find a card like Gifts Ungiven on the top of your deck, then it kind of turns the world into your oyster.
I do like oysters, so, especially grilled.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Inquisition Kozilek from Ethan sees a Lightning Bolt, a Peak, Goblin Electromancer, 2 Desperate Rituals, and a Passive Flames. This is a really, really strong hand, I think.
It's an incredibly strong hand. I mean, I think that Ely's like a Manamorphose short of trying to go off on turn, 3.
So he goes for the Electromancer, meaning that he probably doesn't have a removal spell because, there's plenty of other good targets if he actually had one. Ethan going for a Watery Grave. Thought Seizing. Taking the Desperate Ritual. I wonder if he automatically said it because Ely put that straight into the graveyard.
Yeah. Well, he already knew the contents of his hand from the Inquisition, so he could have just cast the Thought Seize and said it.
A Peak, seeing a Spell Snare and 2 Stubborn Denials and an Engineer's Explosives. That Explosive is just there to really deal with the goblins, or I guess he can deal with one of the cost reducers as well.
Yeah, he could, keep it in his hand and use it to deal with the cost reducers, or he could play it out for 2 if he's in a situation where he feels particularly safe and leave some mana untapped.
A lot of interesting things happen with this matchup because knowing when to go off is actually one of the hardest things you can do with Storm. A lot of times I'll look at a Storm hand and it's like, I don't think I have it. And then I see some other player and they absolutely have it. So how do you kind of... Is this just a deck that you just have to play a lot just to understand when you can push and when you can go off? Because sometimes you actually have to... you have to use some sort of some number of Manamorphoses to kind of guess what's on top of your deck.
Yeah, and I think that it's really wise to play a ton of games with a deck like Storm before you come to a GP like this for precisely that reason, because it can be really difficult to know when exactly you should be going off. A lot of the time, the general rule of thumb is to try to go off on the turn before your opponent would kill you. But in a format where people are playing so many discard spells, that can often be false, and sometimes it's correct to go for it, even when you don't necessarily have all the tools you need, and you're going to have to hit something with a card like Pieces of the Puzzle, or through a Chain of Manamorphose or something like that. And you get to cast so many spells, especially if you're going off for the Past in Flames, that you're often able to do those things that you need to do.
So Ely has 2 Lightning Bolts in hand. I mean, obviously there's actually not that many targets for Lightning Bolt in Ethan's deck. I mean, other than Ethan. Do you think he has it in there just because the Death Shadow deck wants to get so low that he wants to kind of steal a win there?
Well, he could absolutely steal a win by using Past in Flames alongside some Rituals and Lightning Bolts. For example, if Ely is able to just bolt Ethan twice on his end step, putting Ethan down to 3, then on his turn he casts Past in Flames and just flashback a Lightning Bolt for the win. So I don't think it's crazy to think that's a route to victory here for Ely.
So they just had a counter war over Baral, so Ethan actually spell snared it. The Baral responded to by Ethan with a Dispel and then a Stubborn Denial. Going for a Tasigur the Golden Fang.
Yeah, and Ethan would have much rather have had this way, way, way earlier in the game. I mean, the thing about playing against the Storm deck is that even if you do cast those early discard spells, it's hard to get them to like no pressure because they have the ability to flash things back. So if you're not pressuring their life total while you're also disrupting them, then you can be in a pretty bad spot.
So Ethan knows Ely has 2 bolts and a Past in Flames. So actually can be close to killing him because, I mean, Ethan's on an effective 3.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Ethan wasn't sure if he should be cycling that Street Wraith, but he figures that, going to the effective 1 life is the same as 3.
Yeah, I think Ely just starts firing bolts off at Ethan's face, right?
Yeah, I think so. He actually may be able to win the next turn because he actually has, I think he drew a Pyretic Ritual in between. So bolts Ethan down to 4. Oh, so he decides not to actually cast a second bolt. So, what do you think?
I think I like casting a second bolt. I don't know. I think that
because it feels like if he cast it, he probably would have been able to win this turn. Cast the second bolt, bringing Ethan down to 1 unless he has a counter spell.
Yeah, here he seems to be using this lightning bolt on Ethan's upkeep.
One of the funny things is like these 2 lightning bolts, they're the only 2 lightning bolts in Ely's deck list. They're both in the sideboard. Mm-hmm. I wonder if he's, like bringing him in versus Death Shadow doesn't. It's not counterintuitive, but it doesn't seem the most obvious of sideboard cards either.
Oh, absolutely not. It's not a card I would have expected to see post board, but I think Ely's really good to be able to recognize that, the prospect of bolt, flashback bolt, or bolt winning the game is actually quite good when you're playing against a deck that's aggressively taking down its own life total, as the Death Shadow deck does.
So Ethan actually counters the second bolt with a Stubborn Denial, attacks with Tasigur, bringing Tasigur down to... Oh, wow. So Ethan actually goes down to 2 with this Thoughtseize. Sees a Past in Flames, not great for him there. Also sees an Electromancer and a Pyretic Ritual. So if he takes... He can't really take the Past in Flames because it has flashback. And so it takes the Pyretic Ritual to kind of choke Ely's hand a little bit. Oh. Ely draws.
That was beautiful. The Grimshot cost 1 less mana because of Goblin Electromancer, and Ethan was able to finish the game with it.
Okay, that's the last game in round 3, so we'll be back after these messages.